Prior to the release of Pokemon X and Y in 2013, game director Junichi Masuda claimed over and over again that the game's main theme was beauty. And to this day, this is referred to as a fact, often referenced within the Pokemon community, and it is not hard to see why. Set in a region inspired by France, Pokemon X and Y saw an enhanced focus on aesthetics. They were the first mainline Pokemon games to use 3D graphics. Player characters were customizable, and Mega Evolutions involved a visual change to many fan-favorite Pokemon like Mewtwo and Charizard. And a feature called Pokemon Ami gave players an up-close view of their Pokemon to interact and appreciate them more than ever before. Pretty much anything that falls under the wide umbrella of visuals, you could argue, is in support of that idea, that beauty is the game's theme. Further, the game's primary antagonist, Lysander, invokes some form of the word beautiful or beauty pretty much every single time he has the opportunity to speak. He takes the same strategy that the character N took in Pokemon Black and White, where if you just repeat a word over and over again, that it might convince the audience that that's what this game is about, you know? I'm going to destroy the world for beauty. So okay. The game's theme, Pokemon X and Y, the theme is beauty. Part 1, beauty is not a theme. To put it plainly, themes are not single words or broad concepts. The theme of a story is its underlying message, its big idea. I've had themes taught to me as bumper sticker statements or beating hearts. And I think a good way to check yourself is that a theme needs to be argued. So if you have an idea for something you think, I think this is the theme of this story, is there a persuasive element present? Is there something that needs to be argued? That's how I think you know you are on the right track. And what I want to do right now, dear viewer, is that maybe you are somebody who clicked on this video, and before you clicked on this video and I asked you, hey, what is a theme in Pokemon X and Y? Maybe you would have said beauty. Maybe you would have said bonds. I want everybody to just kind of reflect for a second on how that was at your fingertips, how easy it was for you to say those things, and why is it that it was so easy? Is it because all of those things I listed at the top of the video, you know those features, you've researched those features, you know that trivia, so you know beauty is an important concept in this game. Now let me ask you a different question. What does Pokemon X and Y say about beauty? So I think I'm hoping that question is a lot harder to answer, and that you see why. Why is that question so much harder to answer? And I think it's because themes are a function of storytelling, and storytelling cannot be conveyed in a screenshot or a feature list, because stories are not moments, they are movements. Stories have a beginning, a middle, an end. Stories have setup, climax, resolution, and themes have to resonate with an audience on an emotional or an intellectual level. Beauty does not resonate, nor does it convince or have a perspective. Of course, you can prove the existence of beauty in the game, but you prove it in instances. It's something that shows up a lot, but that does not make it a theme. Societal obsession with beauty can lead to destructive behavior. That's a theme. The pursuit of beauty can overshadow one's true identity, leading to a loss of self and authenticity. Theme. The gift of beauty can inspire change and redemption, offering a new path forward in life. Theme. Part 2. But Masuda said, beauty is a theme. Ha ha ha! Masuda the game director, Masuda said, beauty is a theme. So I'm wrong. That's it. Video over. I'm wrong, right? No way. First off, I think contrary to what your English teacher might have told you when you were reading Pride and Prejudice or The Great Gatsby, there is no right answer when it comes to what the theme is in any given piece of art, because themes are argued. They are drawn from evidence in the text and put together to support a particular position. I don't care what Masuda said, But I think what people need to understand first is that here he's semantically maybe using the word theme, but he's not conducting an analysis. He's doing PR for a video game. Further, I want to talk about this concept of death of an author. Let's consider Masuda, the game director, kind of like the authorly hand of this video game. And now let's consider death of an author. Now, nowadays, I will say, I think I see death of an author most cited when you have somebody like J.K. Rowling exposing themselves as a terrible person. And then readers or fans of her Harry Potter books will say, oh, I'm practicing death of an author by ignoring what she says, by pretending she doesn't exist, and choosing to ignore the work she produced on its own. Well, guess what, kids? That is not what death of an author is. Death of an author is a literary theory. It argues that the meaning of a text is not determined by the author's intention, but rather by the reader's interpretation. The idea here is that if you are performing an exegesis of a text, and your analysis and evidence should be found within the text itself. To describe how the text is operating, you should not have to do any homework. You should not have to do outside research to know how a story is operating. And I think if we could hold right there is where I have a lot of friction with the Pokemon community at large. I'm not trying to determine a game's theme as if it were a piece of trivia to memorize. If we're talking about theme, we're talking about meaning, and I think meaning comes from perspective. It comes from interpretation. Art is subject to interpretation. What a piece of art means to you will be different from what it means to me. Part 3. You Pokemon fans. I think Pokemon fans, maybe, in general, are too interested in determining an author's intention when it comes to meaning. What I see a lot of is that people try to determine what Game Freak is trying to do, and then inject that idea with outside meaning. Let me give you an example of this phenomenon. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the most recent games in the franchise, Nintendo Switch, open world, all around the region of Paldea, you find these kind of like weird towers scattered all around this region. If you played Scarlet and Violet, you would no doubt come across one of these towers, many of them at some point, and you would probably, in your playing of the game, flag them as nothing more than an insert in an open world game. The idea being you probably climb to the top of the tower and you look out at the world, and that's supposed to inspire something in you. That's supposed to make you go, oh my God, I can go there, I can go there, I can go there. And maybe, I don't know if it works this way in reality, but maybe the idea is that you can chart your course a little bit. You can say, oh, I see the world, I'm going to go out there. But recently, the Pokemon anime decided to explain what it was that the towers were doing there. And the Pokemon anime says that the towers are in Paldea because Paldea used to be split up in several countries. And then an emperor built these towers so that they could keep an eye on neighboring territories. So Pokemon fans hear this, and they inject this with meaning because they connect it to historically significant events in Spain, because Paldea is largely inspired by Spain. And people essentially Google towers plus Spain. And since something shows up, they have decided it is meaningful. As if Italy, Rome, China, Japan, the entirety of the Middle East, France, don't all have similar history that you could say these towers were inspired by. And I think my issue with all of this is that I think they could have said literally anything to explain the existence of these towers, and it would have had the same impact because the exposition is not drawn from the text. The meaning is not derived from the actual piece of art. You could have said that the towers in Paldea, they were spots for messenger birds to deliver wartime correspondence. Maybe the towers were constructed as some kind of spiritual ritual. The kind of thing where people would climb the ladder, they'd go up to the tower, and they would leave coins, they would leave money, they would offer up money as close, as high to the heavens as they could possibly reach. And at least then it would offer some kind of explanation for what Gimmighoul was doing in those towers, right? And I think what this all comes back to is that Pokemon fans are maybe too interested in finding the correct answer as opposed to interpreting art through a specific perspective. One treats the game as a simple subject in which one can demonstrate expertise through trivia knowledge, and the other understands that art, once it leaves a creator's hands, is up for interpretation by the audience consuming it. We get to decide what's meaningful, and if we don't decide what is meaningful based on how it is executed in the art alone, then it turns out might not be that important. I think research is fun. I think research is fun and interesting and has a place, but I think there is an issue when research is confused for analysis. Part 4, interpretation is fun. Man, I think it would be so interesting if somebody did a close reading of Pokemon X and Y and interrogated what those games are saying through a specific lens. You know how enduring artistic work, Shakespeare, Jane Austen, you know how those are constantly re-examined and reinterpreted? What if we, in a modern context right now, what if we sat down, we did a close read of Pokemon X and Y, and we looked at something like gender? What if we tried to say something about beauty and gender in these games? Without performing a close reading and seeing how things are literally executed, it would be hard for us to come to any solid conclusions right here. But let's just take a bird's eye view and look at some of the elements that we know are at play. Pokemon X and Y. Let's look here. We have a box legendary for Pokemon X that is cited in the game as being involved in life, creating life, while the box legendary for Y is the inverse. This one is interested in death. Now, in these games, we also have a primary antagonist in Lysander. Lysander is designed with a striking Y motif at his chest, and the same thing through the silhouette of his hair. Interestingly, the champion of this region, Diantha, wears an outfit that creates a striking X shape. Further, Pokemon X and Y, if we consider the chromosomes responsible for biological sex, we would be seeing X for women and Y for men. One could argue that there is some kind of alignment here. On one side, you see a woman, a kind of Hollywood celebrity character who has been rewarded for her possession of beauty. On the other side, we have a man whose pursuit of beauty is inexorably tied to destruction and villainy. So just noticing these elements right off the top, there is a large part of me that wants to perform a close reading of Pokemon X and Y and see if the game consistently rewards women specifically for pursuing beauty and punishes men, or shows how men distort the ideal of traditional beauty. And I do think it's interesting that when looking at the game's customization options, and even something like hairstyles, the women have far more options than the men do, almost to, in the game's subtext, demonstrate that women are rewarded for pursuing aesthetics with more options, while men are discouraged from paying the same kind of attention to their own beauty. Conclusion: beauty is not a theme. And I think when we flatten our understanding of storytelling to the most common word repeated in the dialogue, we miss a crucial and fulfilling opportunity to interpret art on our own terms. We are cutting ourselves off from a more interesting discussion, trading what could be fun and insightful for the same dang videos and commentary over and over again, where people say beauty is a theme.